All right. Well, then we just want to thank everyone for attending today's Flexi webinar. Today's webinar, as usual, will be presented by Certified Flexi Trainer Mark Rugen. Mark has over 25 years experience in the sign industry, and he's owned several sign shops. And now he spends his days traveling around the country showing people everything that he knows about Flexi, helping them be as efficient as they can with this software. One thing that I've noticed in the live trainings that I've gone to with Mark is there's a lot of people that are learning Flexi for the first time, and there's also a lot of people that have been using Flexi for years. And I hear them say all the time that they learn something during these trainings from Mark. You know, it's just a little tip or trick that he has that they'll use every day that could save them 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there in design or prepping for RIP. And so Mark just has all these little tidbits of knowledge, and so he's going to go over some of his favorite ones with you today. He'll just kind of show you all the things that he's learned over his years of experience with Flexi. So we'll have that presentation for about 15, 20 minutes, and then afterwards we will have a Q&A session. So on the bottom left of the window here, we've got our chat. And so if you have any questions either about the topics that he covers, or if you have just other questions about Flexi, feel free to go ahead and type those into the chat window, and then Mark will be able to respond to those questions for you. And with that, we'll just turn the time over to Mark.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Stuart, for those kind words, and welcome everyone. Hope you're having warm weather wherever you are. It's a beautiful day in Alabama and Florida, and looking forward to teaching all of you. Today's topic is a very specific one, tips and tricks for print and cut. And I know quite a few of you do this, either making decals for all kinds of applications, including vehicle wraps, interior signage, wall signage, window graphics, floor graphics. A lot of those kinds of projects can be done, especially with your printer, to produce a really nice looking sticker, and you have to put some kind of cut around it in order to use that in your application. It's a very, very good application. So we're glad that we can show you some of these tips here. Some of the challenges, though, that we face in this kind of project is, working with complex backgrounds. Let's say you have an image and it's got a lot of complex background behind it, and you just want the part of the image, but you don't want the background. We're going to talk about how we can solve that for you today. Also, many, many times, some of you may want to do perforation cuts, where you not only do a contour cut, but you want to actually cut all the way through the vinyl, the adhesive, the backing paper, so that you can actually produce a decal with the backing still on it that you might use, in installation, or perhaps even give to the customer in that case. We'll go over that a little bit as well. And then there's always the challenge of, where do I put my registration marks, and how do I print and then take it out, laminate it, and put it back in, and how do I line everything up? And Flexi makes that job very, very easy. In fact, we recently added some new features that I think you'll really like in your capabilities. Some of you are Muto users, Mamaki, GraphTech, Roland users, and so forth. Everybody has a slightly different printer and cutter, but one of the nice things about Flexi is that it accommodates any combination of printer or cutter that you have out there. So we're really going to talk about that, and it's going to be a very, very good presentation. So let's get into it. Let's first of all start with a simple example in Flexi. This is vector artwork. That's a vector image of a Nike player, and then the word Nike right there. I'll zoom up a bit so we can actually see it nice and large. But what we're going to do here is we're just going to select those two pieces, and the contour cutting features are found in the effects menu. So if we go to contour cut, basically what it does is it applies a small gray line around each of the figures here. It's important that you pay attention to your contour cut options. So we're actually doing contour, which is actually following the shape of the graphics. It's important that you make decisions like, do you want the holes there? You can actually click this on, and you can see in his arm down here, between the arm and the leg there, it actually turned on the hole. This is something that's really valuable for using Flexi. If you're an Illustrator user, for instance, what happens is it automatically puts all the holes and so forth, and it's just, you have to go in and delete those things. You don't have to do that in Flexi. You just simply turn them on and off as you want, and it automatically takes care of that. Another great feature of Flexi, too, that I want to make sure you understand, if you apply this, that now is a contour cut that's ready to be used. And, it kind of, your graphic is kind of grouped together here. It's sort of like a grouped or frozen or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, there is a cursor misalignment, by the way, and I apologize for that, guys. That's just the nature of the resolution of the images, unfortunately. In any case, what will happen is I'm going to actually take the word Nike and move it closer to the graphic there. So I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to choose what's called Select Within. That's going to give me a special cursor that allows me to select different parts of my graphic. In this case, I'm going to select the word Nike, and I'm just going to move it closer to the player here. So the lettering is now going to overlap the player just a hair, okay? But what I really want to show here is that after I finished that, I did not need to reconstruct the contour cut. So you can move these graphics around by using Select Within, and the contour cut will actually adhere to reconstruct itself automatically. So you don't have to worry about that. And then one other thing I want to show as a tip here, a lot of folks don't realize this, but sometimes you want to make a little edit to the contour cut. So let's just say that we like pretty much what we see on the screen here, but the E over on the right-hand side, we don't want to have those loops inside the letter E there. We want to actually alter or just simply edit the contour cut itself. Well, you can't use the editing tools with a contour cut yet, because what you have to do in this case is if you have everything pretty much where you want it, but that's all you want to make a change to, you're going to click on the graphic, you're going to right-click on the graphic actually, and you're going to choose what's called Separate Contour Cut. And all that's doing is it's breaking the connection between the graphic and the contour cut. And why I did that is because now I can use my editing tools. There are a lot of editing tools. I'm going to use this straight line tool here. And all I'm going to do is just set a point on top and near the bottom here just to, construct it the way I want. Move those around till you get them, lined up the way you want. When you get the figure that you want, just double click and you've actually edited the contour cut. So you can literally edit contour cuts if you want to. What I would suggest is make your graphic, get it as close to what you want as possible. Then you just right click on it and separate the contour cut, and then just edit it at will. That's a simple example of what we call a contour cut, right? So let's also take, and I'm going to undo that just temporarily. Let's also talk about perforation cuts real quick, and then we're going to go into a harder example where we have a bitmap with a complex background. Okay, this is a vector image right now, everyone. So I'm going to take this now, and if we go back to the effects menu and contour cut, let's select the word here. We'll get this going here in a moment. We had this trouble last time too, Stuart. I had like a breakup of some kind. I don't know what goes on there. It does some weird stuff. Okay, let's just click OK on that. There we go.
It looks like the screen's still working.
Yep, we're good now. We're good now. So I'm gonna get rid of the contour cut. So again, let's add the contour cut back in. Just a normal contour cut, okay? And if we want to add the perforation cut, we can go back to the effects menu and we can do contour cut again. And this time we can actually add this in as a pattern. And you'll see various patterns in your Design Central here. Some of these patterns are okay, but what you're trying to do here is you're trying to actually make that cut all the way through the vinyl, right? So that gaps that you see in the contour cut there are really large in most cases. If you really zoom in on this, you can see that's a really large gap right there. So that would be much more than you'd want. You want to have like about a 0.01, 0.02 gap most times, something like that. And you'll have to simply experiment with your particular cutter and system to get the proper contour cutting. There are some cutters out there, I know. I believe GraphTech and Muto do this, and I'm sure others as well, have internally, they actually have a pattern that's built into their driver options that you can use. So if you have those cutters, you want to investigate that for yourself. But let's show you how to fix this if you need to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down to Edit, and that'll bring up a custom style line here. Again, you can pick whatever line you want, and you can just tell it. Here's how long a dashes want. Here's how small I want my gaps, and you can put in longer dashes, smaller gaps, or bury it as much as you want. And I'm just going to update this and add it, and then click OK. And again, you can see how that's changed the gap size in there, right? The last thing you want to do is you want to make sure that if you're going to do perforation cuts, that you have selected a different color, or perhaps a better way is to make sure that it's different name than the word contour cut. So the first one we added was solid, and it's called contour cut, or cut contour, excuse me. And that's to indicate to your RIP software that is, in fact, not a printable item, but a contour cut. And that's important, especially for you VersaWorks users and all you other guys that are working so hard instead of using Flexi. Just kidding, just kidding. Anyway, the second thing you're going to do is on the perforation cut, be sure you name it differently. In this case, I'm going to use the perf cut contour, and then click OK on that. And the reason is that when we get ready to send this to our printer, and I'm going to go up to the menu at the top and click Rip and Print, okay? And it's going to bring up my Rip and Print menu here, okay, and that's brought it up. This is I'm using as an example in this case, and let's make this a little bigger so we can all see it well. I'm using as an example in this case a Muto cutter. You can use any cutter you wish. That last tab on the end is what controls the contour cut, right? And you can see on the bottom, like near the left-hand side here, it says cut contour on one and perf cut contour on the other. And the reason that's important is because you want them to have different speeds and different pressures. You can cut the contour cut perhaps at regular vinyl cutting speeds and pressures, but for the second one, you actually want to change that. So we're going to uncheck use same driver options for all colors. I'm going to uncheck that and then edit that second perf cut. I'm actually going to tell the cutter how to change. Now, again, some of you may be doing this at your actual cutter, and if you are, that's perfectly fine. What you're going to want to do in that case, if you're changing the pressures and speeds at your cutter, you're going to want to go in here into the same area and click None, so that none of this information is sent to that cutter. Otherwise, even if you make changes on your cutter, this is going to override it. That's probably why some of you experience, I get calls sometimes, and it's like, I made these changes, I slowed it down, I changed pressure, but it always changes it back. Well, Flexi's talking to your cutter, so you have to tell it not to talk if you're actually doing the pressure changes from your cutter, all right? Otherwise, if you are doing it from here, you're actually going to change the values here. So this is, in this case, for the perf cut, I might want to increase my pressures that I've experimented with, and I know this is the right pressure. I might want to slow down my speeds. Or at the very least, I might want to say, well, use condition number 2 or 3. So if I preset in this case, a Graphtec to a certain condition for perf cutting, I can say, well, use that perf cutting condition. So be sure you understand that when you're creating these perf cuts and so forth, it is important to see that information and change that information. Okay, now let's go on to a little bit more difficult situation. Okay, let's import a file, and let's just use one that's like this one here. Okay, I'm just going to use this as an example, and just disregard the background back there. It doesn't make any difference. So if I'm going to put a contour cut around a bitmap, sometimes it's easy, like in this one, because I have a solid white background. If I just put a contour cut around this, what's going to happen is it's just going to put it a rectangle, because it's in the white part of the bitmap over here. Let me zoom up a bit. This white part of the bitmap is in the way, right? So I don't want that. I want to go around the actual contour of the bottle. So to get rid of that solid background back there, I'm going to use my bitmap editing tools, or I can just go to the bitmap menu and choose Make Transparent, and it'll start up one of the tools, which is the magic wand. And I'm going to select that white background. And it may be difficult to see on the video, but there's actually an animation that shows you what's been selected. And this is going right around the edge of the bottle. So if I click OK to that, if I say OK, and then I go back to my Edit menu and choose Contour Cut, you'll see now it's actually around the shape of the bottle. So if I click Apply, and then we just maximize that, it's actually around the shape of the bottle. You can actually see it around the shape of the bottle now. So that's how you can get rid of a complex, or not a complex, but a solid background and do your contour cut around an image like that. But sometimes we run into an issue where we have a very complex background. Let me just open up a file and I'll show you what I mean. Let's try this one right here. All right, let's take a look at that. So in this case, maybe what I want is I want the birds and the branch, but I don't want that background behind it. So a lot of folks with experience with Photoshop and so forth know they can get rid of that background fairly easy in that program. But for those of you that want a super easy way to do this, I have a program that I'd like you to look at that will allow you to get rid of complex backgrounds very easily. It's not part of the SAi system, but it's something I want to show you. It's a tool that you can use with perf cutting that I show all my classes. It makes life super easy to handle this kind of graphic, okay? And it works perfectly with Flexi. So this is not part of Flexi. Don't get that idea. You have to go out and get this. But I think you'll really like this. It's a program called Photo Scissors. It's like 19 bucks, and it's really easy to own and use. And basically what you do here is you highlight the birds, and you don't even have to highlight all of them. Just sort of trace around where you want to. This is like I'm kind of telling the program this is the part I want to keep, okay? So I'm just kind of going around like this and just saying here's the part I want to keep. All right. There's another bird on this side here. Got to back up a little bit. There we go. Okay, and then you just pick the red button, just say, here's the area that I want to get rid of. And you'll see it starts updating on the right-hand side what it's actually going to look like. So you can start saying, you know, here's the areas I don't want that part. And then there's a little part of the bird missing there. So I go back to my green, you know, and say, make sure you include that part. Isn't that cool? That's pretty easy. And you can get real detail and get into the in-between and all that. What I also like about this software is that you can feather this. So you know, it's kind of like when you're doing this kind of thing in any program around the edge, it makes like a hard line a lot of times. So you can actually feather that if you want to give it kind of a faded out look if you want to. And you can set what's called offset boundaries and so forth. You can do as much as you want, and it really is a fairly good program like that. So what you would do is you would save that, and it saves it as a PNG format. And you would go right back into your Flexi at that point. You would open that. I've already got one done here. I would open that up, and that's what the final product would look like. And at this point, because it's a PNG file, you'd be able to go to your effects menu and add your contour cut. And as you can see, it's actually the shape of the birds here. And keep in mind that you can do a 0. You can do you know, a negative amount. So what I'm saying there is, if you're using this kind of program, sometimes you can use it just on the inside of that feathered area, and what that does is that kind of gives you a little bleed around your graphic there. So you have a little bleed around it if you want to. So that's another way to kind of get a bleed if you need it for some of these graphics as well. And again, you can be more accurate, less accurate as need be. So once you've got that applied like this, one of the other nice features in Flexi is if you're exporting the file to another program, or if you're using some other contour cutting program to run your cutter, you don't necessarily have to use Production Manager. You can literally, in Flexi itself, you can go to the effects menu, and you can also add cut marks right in Flexi for specific models of cutters and printers. So this is Flexi itself. I'm not in the rip and print menu. I'm actually in Flexi. And in this case, you can choose a number of different options, whether it's manual. We've got Mimaki, GCC, GraphTech, Craft Robo, Roland's, Opus, Marks. We've got Muto in here, like I've got turned on, Aristo. And there's some nice little options in here for changing things, like if you want to change the size of the marks, change the margins and so forth. Really nice. And when you apply that, what would happen at this point then is you could export that file if necessary to send to perhaps another program that you want to use for printing and cutting. So it's a great way to add them right inside of Flexi as well. So that kind of gives you an idea. What we did there was we worked with a little bit of perf cut, and we worked a little bit with contour cut. We took a regular bitmap with a solid background. We can use the Make Transparent feature from the bitmap to show that that we can do it right in Flexi. And then if you need to use a complex background and remove a graphic from a complex background, we showed you Photo Scissors. Again, it's an inexpensive way to take a graphic and get rid of that background by just marking it, and it works really well with Flexi as well. It produces that PNG file, and that's easily imported into Flexi. So great little software that combines with Flexi, a great tool for print and cut. I'd recommend it to all of you. So that kind of is our lesson today. I'm going to make sure that this has all been recorded, so what we're going to do is clean that up a little bit. Might take a few hours, and then we repost that so that everybody gets the presentation. You'll actually get to see the entire presentation. You'll get to see this program as well, and you'll get to see why Flexi is really the best print and cut software in the world, the easiest thing to use. So hope you enjoyed the presentation. I guess we're ready for some questions here, Stuart.
Okay. Fantastic. Looks like we already have a couple come through. We have one from Natasha. I think this one came in a little bit earlier, but she said, do the cut lines registered on Mimaki printer, or do they have to be changed to Mimaki cut lines?
Right. So I'm not sure exactly what that question is, but I think what we might be talking about here is when you add a contour cut line to anything in Flexi, right? Anything, all right, whatever shape you want it. When you click the Rip and Print button, you've already set up your cutter and your print software. So what will happen is when it gets to this particular location like this, and you see those registration marks, those are the registration marks for the cutter that I've set up. And you can actually click the last tab in the Rip and Print menu here, and if you have multiple cutters, you can pick the cutter that you want over here. So your Mimaki cutter, if that's the case, would show up here. And if you're using the Mimaki that's actually a print and cut combination, or if you're using like a Roland print and cut combination, it may actually say hybrid job, and it might actually give you the registration marks automatically for that particular feature. So again, like for Roland, it's circles. I'm not sure what Mimaki uses, but normally it assigns those registration marks automatically for you. So that ought to be pretty easy to handle.
Okay. Could you go over part of that again? What menu did you go under to select the cutter print marks to print through Flexi? Did you right-click on it, or?
Within Flexi itself, if you want to add the cutter print marks, then what you do is once you have your contour cut made, go back to the Effects menu, and you're going to choose Contour Cut Mark in the Effects menu. And when you choose that, then it's going to give you a Design Central choices over here on the right, and you'll be able to see those marks. So if we're talking about Mimaki here, it would be Mimaki Type 1. Then you would also be able to click on the Options button and choose the thickness of those or the size. And that's important, especially thickness and size, because number one, if you're trying to eliminate wasted material, but number two, if you're going to laminate it and it's got that satin finish to it, sometimes it has trouble finding those markers. You might want to thicken up the markers a little bit, and it would give a little more bulk to the markers, and then when they print, they're thicker, and it'll be a little easier for the electronics to find the registration marks.
Okay, thank you. So it looks like Megan has a question about printing and cutting large mural panels. She says, how do we make the panels side by side in Flexi?
Okay, so probably in that case, it's a bit of a different topic, because I think that's probably a topic related more to big wall graphics that are square and overlapping. So one of the features that you might want to investigate is when you have a large graphic and you get ready to print that. I'll see if I can simulate this a bit. And you actually have these tiles here, you know, where it's overlapping like that. If that's what you're talking about, I'm not sure if that's the case or not. But if it is, there's actually a capability in the RIP and in the production manager of Flexi that allows you to add what's called tile markers. And it literally would print a marker where the overlap goes. So it would show you where the tiles need to be overlapped. So that might be another topic that we might cover at a later date, but good question there.
Okay. And Toby, I missed this question earlier. For Fred, you wanted to know if we have a list of the best settings for cutting. Like, what do you use for your
Right.
normal
We do
cutting
not have a list
settings?
of that because the cutting part of it is very, very specific to your cutter. So, Rate, Muta, and so forth, and it's also specific to the kind of blade that you're using. So if you're using a 45 or a 60-degree blade, what you do there is you'll have to follow your cutter manufacturer's recommendations for setting the depths. And most of them, since they realize you're going to be using this for printing and cutting, they'll have some recommendations perhaps. And again, it also depends on the media. So if you're cutting, high performance vinyl, that's one setting. If you're cutting intermediate vinyl, that might be a different pressure and speed. So I would say check with your cutter manufacturer on possible settings for pressures on that.
Okay. Looks like we had a follow-up to Megan's question about the panels.
Mm-hmm.
She said, we have a 60-inch roll, and when we contour cut the panels, it wants to only put them on top of each other, not side by side, even though the panel is only 24 inches. When I manually do it by importing each panel each time, but when I do the tiles, it won't put them side by side.
I'm not quite sure I'm following there. I know that, let's see here. Let's do a little contour cut on this. I know in some cases, what you might do if this is a very large image here, and you've got a contour cut around it, and you get ready to go send that to your cutter over here. And let's make that as large as we can make it. We'll just do really big here and flip it like this. And then let's go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. And so what should happen here, let's just highlight that. What happens here is then it has the markers obviously are right near the edge. You have to be careful with that. But it should actually cut, and you'll actually see here, in this case, it's actually showing a cut with overlap on both of these. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit on here. So you can actually see that whatever that overlap I've set is what the contour cut's going to do. So it should be fairly automatic. Perhaps she could send that question to you, Stuart, or to SAI, and they could give her a little bit more specific information. But normally it should be fairly automated.
Okay. And it looks like we've got a pretty in-depth question here about a specific situation from Perry about registration marks.
Mm-hmm.
Perry, I'll have our Mark or support team take a look at that and send you an email so we can help you get that one figured out. But moving on, it looks like we have a question here about doing perf cuts. Toby wants to know, do you have to run the cutter twice when you have perf cuts, or will it cut both of them in one go?
Right, yeah. So you can actually control that. Again, what happens is it will do it in the proper order. So you're going to do your print, and it's going to put the registration marks down. When you put that back in your cutter, the first thing it's going to do is all the contour cuts. So it'll cut all the contour cuts and then pull that back to its origin location, and then what it wants to do is immediately do the contour cutting at that point. So it's going to do all the contour cuts. It will do then the perf cuts. One thing that you might kind of investigate here that could perhaps help you, and I'll do this on this particular case. Let's add a contour cut to it, and then let's add a little perf cut real quick. Okay, and then I'm going to make a few copies of that. You can, by the way, true shape nesting would be the right way to do this, but I'm just going to make 4 copies or so because I just want to have multiple copies. One nice thing in Flexi, and I have we've got this background set up now, the substrate or the artboard for all of you Illustrator users. This is I'm just setting up to the size of my vinyl. That's what I would recommend, and the reason is that there's a great feature in the arrange menu over here called cut order, and it actually shows you a preview of how it's going to cut this. So it would cut these first, second, third, and fourth. And what's nice about this is that if I say okay to that and I go back into my cut order, you can actually preview how this is going to be cutting. So this is the reason I'm mentioning this is that for contour cutting, when you're doing multiple copies, it's not a bad idea to preview that, because when you start making multiple copies of the same graphic and placing that and sending that over to your cutter, it can literally move that vinyl back and forth tons of times, because you're sort of randomly, so to speak, putting these in there. And what you really are after is something that's a little more orderly. And if you don't like the order in which it's cutting, then what you literally can do is you can preview what's going to happen, and you can literally go in here to your arrange menu, and under cut order, you can reorder these. You literally can say, I want to do that one first, and this one second, and this one third. I mean, you literally can manually cut these in any order that you want, and you can even sort them for maximum speed and the fewest lifts of the cutter, so that you have the least amount of vinyl movement. It's very important, especially when you're doing your perf cuts, because you want to be able to control and make sure that once it's cutting all the way through the vinyl, it's doing it in some order that's not random, and that will help you in getting stability in your media, so that you can pull those contour cuts out and perf cuts out easily without getting it caught and paper jams and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. So Brian wants to know, where do I go to see all the past teaching help and tricks?
Stuart, do you know the answer to that?
Yes. So we have all the recordings of past webinars on the SAi International YouTube page, as well as Mark has done a series of shorter, concise videos showing how to use each of the features in Flexi. So we've got some shorter ones, he's got some more in-depth ones, as well as all the recordings that we have for these webinars. And the SAi International YouTube page, it'd be youtube.com/the SAi channel. In addition, we'll be recording this one. Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, Stuart, if you have the latest Flexi 11 or 12, you've got these little resources on the right-hand side here. That's the cloud part of Flexi. You can just click on YouTube, and what it'll do is it'll take you right there. It'll literally take you to the website that's the site for watching all those YouTube videos. So take advantage of that button too, because what it'll do is I'm just going to stop this, because it'll actually take you to the site that you need to get that particular graphic or that particular page. So it's another easier way to do it.
Yeah, and we'll be uploading this video to YouTube as well, so if you click on those links, you'll be able to view this anytime you like. And we'll have this uploaded in the next day or two for you as well, Ryan, to answer your question there. So it looks like we do have, there it is. So Andrea had a suggestion for a future topic. She said that I would like to learn at some point about fading around a print.
Awesome. Good topic to talk about.
Yeah, and we're going to ask all the participants today what topics you wanted to learn in the future. We've got a list of ideas that we like to cover, but really this is for you and for you to be able to get your questions answered. So if there's a topic that you would like to learn about in the next webinar or a month from now, go ahead and type that into the chat window, give us some ideas and suggestions, and we'll be able to go through those and see how we can best meet your needs.
And I believe I got disconnected video from here, but that's okay. We can still talk. Real good.
Right.
I think that's a good time for our stopping point then.
Yeah, we've got a few suggestions here, so we'll be able to go over those and make sure we can get those implemented into our plan for the future.
Yeah, send those topics in, man, because we want to do this every month. And like Stuart mentioned, if we pick your topic, you're going to get that DVD for free. So we'll be glad to send that to you.
All right, we're going to leave the chat window open for just a minute here so everyone can get any of their suggestions in. And Jennifer, yeah, you can watch any of the past classes, the webinars that we've had, all on that YouTube channel. We've got them all uploaded. And if you just want to view webinars, just type webinar into the search field on the SAi International page, and it'll pull up every webinar that we've recorded.
Cool.
Okay, so it looks like we've got a lot of good questions about, or topics, color profiling and transparencies, contour cutting. We'll be able to go through those and make sure that we can address those questions for you.
Yeah, and I think one
a lot
more
of color
thing,
profiling requests.
if you had a question in here and it didn't get answered, we'll follow up on that, folks. So we just want to make sure y'all can get back to work so you can make some money and buy some more Flexi.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for all your suggestions, and we will see you all next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.